This is The Blitz with Jason Minnix and the brightest sports insiders. San Antonio Sports Star, ESPN 1250 and 94.5 FM.
It is The Blitz here on San Antonio Sports Star, ESPN AM 1250, 94.5 FM. I'm Jason Minnix. Glad to have you along on this Monday because, well, it's time for Mondays with the Moose. Three-time Super Bowl champion and Fox analyst Daryl Johnston, the Moose, joining us now to talk about what happened to the Cowboys yesterday, Moose.
What happened? What was that? Holy cow.
That was ugly. And you know what's weird? I'm not mad about it. I don't know what. Normally, you're just angry after a game. Like the Denver game. It's like, how can that happen? It was billed as the game of the year, and it just didn't live up to its hype. Dak had no time, not sounding like excuses or reasons, but no time to throw the ball. He seemed off, and it was just ugly from start to finish.
Absolutely. And Kansas City as well. Patrick Mahomes struggled a little bit. So, I mean, people talking about a possible 38-35, 41-38 type game, and it was nothing even close to that. So the big thing is you hope that what happened in that game, that's just Chris Jones, having a night. I don't think Dallas did a great job of matching the emotion at the start of the game. And then when, Steve Spagnuolo's defense started to play the way they did, there was not a good response. So those would be the only things that I would be concerned about, which is more, kind of that, individual reflection by each player and kind of owning that after they watched that film. That to me was one of the biggest things that motivated me. That film goes out to everybody in the NFL. Your opponents are going to watch, probably, the three previous games. And so for me, I always wanted to make sure that, when my opponent was watching me on film, he knew he was in for a full day. So I think that's one of those games last night where you can put that film on and say, is this what we want our opponents to think of us as they're preparing? This is not who we are. This is not us.
How concerning is it for a game with this kind of hype? And the Cowboys felt that hype all week. They were going into Arrowhead, going into Kansas City, all of that. For them not to have energy early, is that on Mike McCarthy not having his team hyped and ready to go? Is that on Dak and some of the team leaders? I mean, it's an interesting way to look at things, but you're right. They got punched early and they never recovered.
Yeah, it's a little bit of everything, Jason. The coaches can't get you ready emotionally to play the game. They can prepare you, scheme-wise and strategy. There may be an opportunity for them during the course of the game with a fourth down call, a cover zero blitz, something, a wrinkle on special teams, to contribute, to generate some momentum. But when you talk about just the emotion of going to Arrowhead and playing that team on their home field, that was the troubling thing to me. They just, the drops early in the game, the mistakes early in the game, they just weren't locked in mentally and emotionally as good as I would have hoped they would have. So I'll put it on the leaders. I'll put it on the captains, the Daks, the Micah Parsons, who had a hell of a game. So, he was ready to go. But that's what happens, right? And you could see it was contagious. On the defensive side of the ball, Micah Parsons, kind of got that whole unit up and going. But we just didn't have that on the offensive side. There wasn't a big catch and run. There wasn't a, Tony Pollard, Ezekiel Elliott, neither one of those guys had a big run. There was nothing there that they could kind of lash a hold of and start to build off.
Daryl Johnston, the Moose, joining us here on the Blitz, talking about yesterday's tough loss to the Kansas City Chiefs by the Dallas Cowboys. Typically, okay, that's one game. But we said that 2 games ago against Denver. Should there be concern about this team and readiness and energy and that sort of stuff when we've seen clunkers in 2 of their last 3 games?
Yeah, right. And the one in between is Atlanta, and then we see what New England did to Atlanta. So Atlanta's just they're in a tough spot right now. So that wasn't as quality a win as I thought it was at the time. So not only going back and reevaluating Denver and Kansas City, but really I think you have to take a look at Atlanta as well. That might have masked a few issues, offensively that surfaced last night in that game. So, this is going to be a tough one coming up on Thanksgiving Day. It's Rich Bisaccia coming back here, who was a coach here. That there's always a little bit more emotion there. They've struggled a little bit as of late, but there is talent on that roster. They've had an emotional roller coaster of a season. With Coach Gruden, with Henry Ruggs, there's things that have gone on in that organization that can really, really disrupt the team. So we'll see where they are at the start of the game, but Dallas really needs to just flush Sunday night. That's the good thing about Thanksgiving week. You don't come in on Monday and spend some time, breaking down the previous game. You got to move right on to your game for Thursday. So you're not going to have to watch that over again. You're going to get right on to Las Vegas. So, that'll be the one good thing this week. Just forget about that and move forward as quick as possible.
Daryl Johnston joining us here on the Blitz. When you talk about lack of emotion, how much finding out the day of Amari Cooper, who's unvaccinated, test positive, so he's out, and Tyron Smith, who is a game-time decision, is out. How much did just finding out those guys weren't going to be there, how much do you think that played a factor in readiness?
I don't think a lot. I really don't.
Okay.
Tyron has been in and out of the lineup this year, so that one is going to be an easier adjustment. Amari Cooper has been in and out of the lineup, so there's things you can look at and say that they may have impacted that. But if Dallas is the team that they want to be, that's something that they've got to be over. They've got to be able to overcome that, even against a team like Kansas City at their home field. You've got to be able to overcome that even without your left tackle, even without one of your top receivers. If they're the team that they hope to be, that they want to be, then that should have no impact on how they perform in that environment. And that is something that would just be, I would consider an excuse, because they just did not play well. They had drops, they had penalties. That had nothing to do with a couple of key guys missing that game.
Daryl, it feels like the NFL has wanted some parity, and we're getting it now. The last couple of weeks have been weird. You look at the way the Bills lost to the Colts, and I'm sure Buffalo Sports Talk Radio similar, like those of us that cover the Cowboys. You look at two clunkers out of 3 weeks. I mean, they lost to Jacksonville. Now they got blown at home by the Colts. Green Bay losing to Minnesota yesterday. I don't know how you explain the Texans beating the Titans yesterday on the road, what the Eagles did to the Saints. It's interesting because I think this is what the NFL wants. It's just weird seeing it.
Well, if we go back, I mean, we were about 6 weeks in, and we had those teams at the top of the NFC, and everybody was saying how, we're going to have 4 dominant teams in the NFC conference, and then it's going to be a race for those other 3 spots from this group, and those teams at the top are starting to drift back. The teams in the middle are starting to push up. So it is definitely becoming a season of parity this year, and we're having huge comebacks. Teams that are falling behind by double digits and coming back and winning. We're having, teams with great records losing to teams with looking at it, you would think they wouldn't have a chance to win that game. And the one you bring up, the Houston-Tennessee game is a great example. Listen, Derrick Henry is a unique running back in this league, but he's not that, for Houston to come in and be able to do that. But, they also lost to the Jets. Tennessee did. So, I mean, that's just an odd thing for them. I think as soon as we think we know who the dominant teams are in the conference, all of a sudden they hit a little bit of a road bump. And, 3 weeks ago, the Bills were considered the best team in the NFL. And,
it's crazy.
Obviously, that is not the case anymore.
And then you look at Arizona going in and beating Seattle with Colt McCoy.
Yes. Colt McCoy won, he's won 2 out of 3. And it's funny during the off season, there's signings that happen and, nobody really talks about them a whole lot. I remember when that signing happened and just to, the fact that Streveler came in late in the year and played the way he did, it's not a fit. It's not a fit for what they're trying to do. Colt McCoy is not Kyler Murray, but he's going to be able to get in there and work within the structure of that offense and be effective. And he's going to be smart, and he's not going to beat himself. And he's done that 2 out of 3 opportunities. So I in years past when Kyler Murray has been out of the lineup. And that's one of the things, Steve Keim deserves a lot of credit because he knows his starting quarterback is not going to make it through the season healthy all 17 games. And he knew he had to upgrade his backup quarterback. I think it's one of the savvier moves, during the course of this offseason that nobody really talked about.
He is Daryl Johnston, 3-time Super Bowl champion with the Dallas Cowboys. He's an analyst on Fox, and he's got a new title, Executive Vice President of Football Operations for the USFL, which is officially back. You were officially announced with the new title late last week, at least publicly. I guess you've probably known you got the gig for a while. But today the cities and logos were announced and for the 8 teams. Now, Daryl, you and I got to know each other really well here in San Antonio with the Commanders during the Alliance days. I was a little surprised and honestly disappointed San Antonio's not in the mix with the USFL, at least not at the beginning.
Yes, not in the original rollout. But the San Antonio Gunslingers are one of the teams from the USFL. We're hoping to have success this time and be able to push this into season 2, season 3, and hopefully as that starts to happen, we can bring back some of the other franchises that were a part of the USFL and San Antonio, because of the response and that we had with the Commanders down there. I mean, they have been the envy of the XFL, even the talk with the NFL now. I mean, a couple of weeks ago they started to put out some press releases, about potential expansion and what the cities would be, and San Antonio is a part of that. So it's the fans of San Antonio have earned the right, to have a team there, and not just a spring league team. I really feel that they've earned the right, to have an NFL team in that city. The support that they showed us was unbelievable from day one. I saw it, with the Saints when Katrina was there and they spent 5 weeks down in San Antonio. I reached out to the San Francisco 49ers when they had their issues last year. Mayor Nurnberg, contacted me and I reached out to John Lynch, to see if they wanted to come down to San Antonio, that San Antonio, would welcome the franchise with open arms, and they had already made their plans to go to Arizona. But that's the type of mayor you have. He's going to be a forward-thinking guy. He knows the importance and the value of having a franchise like that, in San Antonio. So I hope the time is near that the NFL recognizes, the fan support and the love of football down in San Antonio, because we've seen it demonstrated time and time again. And, if the NFL is not going to be there soon, I hope that the USFL will. And I can't imagine as we move out to the West, if you kind of look at how the structure of that league is going to be right now, it's 4 Northern and 4 Southern. We really have it. We've got Houston and we've got New Orleans. So, San Antonio can be a fit. The big thing will be the geography of the team. So as we start to slide, I'm going to be pushing for San Antonio just based on my experiences. So you've got a huge supporter and a huge fan of the San Antonio sports community, that's in a decision-making area for the USFL.
We know that you will champion the city. My biggest concern, and you've been in meetings, so you will be able to answer this far better than me, but it seems like with the Alliance, with the XFL, which you were also a part of, it seemed like the teams that did the best with corporate sponsors, ticket sales, and merchandise were football-hungry cities that also did not have an NFL team in them. And when I look at the NFL cities of the original 8 here for the rebirth of the USFL, you're in a lot of NFL cities. I thought that maybe the new spring leagues would try to avoid that.
Yes. The XFL did it. And, I was kind of surprised because I thought we had success with the model that you're talking about. And the one city that we did see that support in was St. Louis, a team that had an NFL team and lost an NFL team twice. So, that was the best fan base in the XFL. So, yeah, there's definitely that void of not having the NFL team in the city, I think works well. But I think, when Fox purchased the rights to the USFL, they got everything. They got, the cities, the colors, the logos, the mascots. So it was best for them to stay, true to what the original vision was. And we've gotten a lot of positive feedback, and people are excited for the fact that, you're going to get to see the Tampa Bay Bandits and the Houston Gamblers and, the teams that they remember, on the first go around with the USFL. So, there is a little bit of that there, but that does force you into Philadelphia, into Pittsburgh. The Michigan team will play probably out of Detroit. So to your point, yeah, we are in a lot of cities that have that carry. Of the original ones coming out, Birmingham is the only city that doesn't have NFL representation of the 8 that we're going to start the journey with.
And I'll tell you what, Daryl, and you know that I'm a big fan of spring football after the experiences with the Alliance. If you guys can get through one season without either somebody running out of money or a pandemic hitting, and you get through that first season and get to year 2, this will work. It's just, for something just has to do whatever it can to get through that first year.
I agree. And I think that's why, everybody's excited about this. And when I talk to people, it's amazing the response from people I thought that would be hesitant to be a part, just because of the failures of the other 2 leagues. But I think that they recognize that as well, that if it weren't for some very strange circumstances, some self-inflicted, some outside of our control, getting to year 2, I think really, proves that there's an opportunity for this to work. And I think the way that we have everything structured so far this time, going to one host city and minimizing the expenses coming out there in year 1 and really concentrating and focusing on the product of the quality of football and the quality of the football players, in our league, and the distribution, of the product to the fans, around the country. We're going to really, really be hyper-focused on those important areas and try to grow, the support, for our teams. And then once we leave, that host city and the teams go back, that'll give them a year, over a year to kind of build the excitement for those teams to arrive into the host cities.
And again, I think if, the weird circumstances of the Alliance, and then, of course, the pandemic, obviously TV ratings were solid enough for Fox to say, we're buying that, and we are going to do what it takes to make it work. So when do we actually see spring football with the USFL?
We're going to go. We got a pretty aggressive timeline. We're going to go spring of 2022. We're going to go this spring.
Okay.
So we're not the traditional calendars that were used the last 2 years. That weekend after the Super Bowl, we're actually going to push it back. We've run some analytics and we think we found a better window that gives us a little bit more time, to get this up and running. So that'll be helpful. Number one, to make sure that we get this done the right way. Organizing everything and launching it. But number 2, I think the other important thing is just, as you pointed out, moving forward, into year 2, there's this window that we've selected that we feel is a real downtime in sports. It gives the football fan a little bit of a break after the Super Bowl. We're not putting our product right up against, the NFL product and the 2 best teams in the NFL and the most watched game around the world, happening the week before we're starting. We're going to get a little bit of distance away from that. Let the football fans, kind of catch their breath a little bit. And then once they want to start watching some football again, we'll be ready to get up and running. And we're going to be kind of pushing ourselves towards the middle and making the calendar friendly. So if guys do catch some NFL eyes, there's time for them to get into an NFL camp. It'll be a little bit tighter fit than it was for the Alliance or the XFL, but it'll still provide them the time, to get into an NFL camp.
It's going to be exciting times. Can't wait for it to get started. Can't wait for there to be a team in San Antonio. Daryl, always appreciate the time, my friend. Have a happy Thanksgiving. We'll talk to you next Monday.
Yes, you too, Jason. Have a great Thanksgiving. Have a happy Thanksgiving to everybody listening.
Appreciate it. Daryl the Moose Johnston, 3-time Super Bowl champion, Mondays with the Moose. You heard some very interesting things there when it comes to pro football in San Antonio and the aggressive nature of our mayor, Ron Nirenberg, behind the scenes. That was good stuff.